Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today what we're working on is we're going to be removing the occultation plastic that we put over the daffodils around the 25th of May, and should have killed off most of the weeds and stuff that were in there, except for the perennial grasses that are always kind of be a little bit of a fight. But we're going to pull this off, and if you can look back here, you can see there's really nothing really pushing the plastic up, so everything is probably pretty much decomposed down. Now, after we pull the plastic off, we're then going to plant our pumpkins, and which are ornamental pumpkins, as plus some winter squash for us for a winter time, just like we did last year. And as we put that down, we're also going to be using some fresh hay straw over the top to just kind of give it some insulation until things can kind of spread and fill in. So let's get to it, pull the plastic off, and see what's underneath. Now, how I'm folding this is multiple pieces, so I'm going to fold them until I can get them kind of narrow, and then I'm going to roll it up so that when I want to use it again, it'll be a matter of unrolling and putting it right back out. So it's kind of like the idea here is if I use some organization in terms of how I put this away instead of just balling it up, it'll make it a lot easier when I need to use it again. Okay, we've got the tarps off. As we can see in here, pretty much everything was killed off. We had a couple of 115-degree days, and really under that black plastic, that kind of took care of it. Matter of fact, we don't hardly see any rodent tunnels in here like last year where we had lots of mouse ins and outs. So I guess maybe that's a good thing for having like 9 cats on the place, huh? Last thing we're going to do is, before we plant, is we're just going to take the scythe and kind of clean the edge, throw that weedy, grassy stuff back up on the bed, and then I got a bale of hay. I maybe need 2, but we're going to just mulch the top of this with about, if it's a 1/2 inch of hay over the top, that's probably about all we'll do.
That's our hay.
It's our hay, yeah. It's off our place.
They just did it yesterday.
Yeah, so we know that there's no funky, weird aminoparalids or other herbicides in it. And I mean, this is clean stuff other than the weed seeds that came with it. But I'm not worried about weed seeds, because weeds that germinate, and what'll happen is when the crops, really gets a canopy going, there really isn't much extra control that needs to be done. They kind of get shaded out. And then the fall weeds, again, what we do is when we finish with the pumpkins, we'll come in with a very quick occultation rotation. As you might remember, we did that last fall, and we put it down, I think it was like the end of October, and it stayed till around the first week of December. And then we come back in with the urban waste compost mulch over the top of the daffodil beds. It's like, lather, rinse, and repeat.
Yep. The thing that we didn't show was the planting side. That's why we're doing that today.
Yeah.
And no, we're not too late for this. This
is
always about when we plant the mini pumpkins and our squash and pumpkins for edible. Always around the 1st of July.
Right. So that gives us, our harvest with the mini pumpkins was like a first week October?
Oh, actually, we had some in late September, which was just fine.
Some of the varieties, came on a little faster.
Right. Some of the smaller ones.
And the plants we already started, so they're already transplant size, so they're they'll be taken off real fast.
But yeah, we're not running too late. This works for
us.
Now, our customers and for ourselves.
If you're someplace with a much shorter season,
that's different.
You gotta adjust it to wherever you're at.
for those of you who do not know, we have a whole video on, well, actually two, of Tony doing Scythe on grass and then weeds. This is just so much more effective for us, quick and efficient, than trying to get a string trimmer out, which has never worked for us.
Well, there are some advantages to the Scythe and some advantages to a string trimmer. You know,
yeah,
some of these new electric ones I think are intriguing in the sense that they are now at a point where the batteries give you a fairly good life, and it takes away the vibration from the motor and the noise and stuff like that.
But this is like, by the time you went and got that and all that, got it set up, this would be done.
Oh yeah, the batteries too are very expensive for those guys because they use those 20-volt ones. So you're typically talking well over $100 a battery.
So this is just an alternative that over time we've just grown to love.
It's quieter.
Yeah.
This is a very light tool, so it doesn't really bother, you know, carrying it around or using it over time.
And no, I don't use it. It's sized for Tony.
Yeah, the Scythe is sized specifically to an individual. The Scythe is.
Yeah.
The blade's not. I mean, the blade's just the blade.
But it's not sized for me.
Okay, so we trimmed up the edge a bit with the Scythe. That didn't take too long. Just threw that extra stuff on the beds here. Now we're just going to put out the straw, hay, and probably, you know, I was looking at the soil too. I think we're going to have to wet this down before we plant because it's actually really pretty dry under here. So we'll probably then just put the sprinkler over it and then have to plant later. Yeah, bummer. Wanted to do it all in one fell swoop, but might end up having to do it, do the planting, you know, at another point. So we're not going to put this down very thick, and it's not really a scientific method. It's kind of like, you know, there it goes.
And the purpose?
Well, how about that? There's a pin oak tree. Was.
Down in our field?
Down in our field. The purpose of this is going to be for moisture conservation, so that when we do water, that it'll hold things in better and add just more organic material to the soil.
Should you do this after you plant?
Well, you know, you can, but then you got to spend the time trying to, you know, work around the plants. So I'm just going to kind of think it's going to be easier to put this down now, wet it down so it'll kind of, you know, lose its loft and be down. And then we can come through with the dibble stick and just, you know, stick the plants in. Last year we did it, we put the plants in, then we came back and mulched, and it just really took a lot more time.
Is the watering of this, wetting it down, going to encourage weed seeds from the hay?
Yeah, probably. But I'm not worried about it again because, first of all, a lot of these plants are going to be more suited to the weeds. The grasses are going to be more suited for germination in fall when it cools down more. You'll get some, but the vast majority of the seeds will probably just sit there until the fall rains come and it's cooler days, cooler nights. It's kind of like the same thing, you know, when you're seeding a yard. So I'm thinking, you know, from that standpoint.
What kind of grass is in your hay?
Oh, it's all kinds of wild stuff. Things, perennial rye. There's probably some fescue in it. Looks like there's some vetch. There's all kinds of things in it. But again, you know, out in this area, I'm not too worried about any of these things establishing something, because I'm really at a point where I'm going to occultate this thing twice a year, and then what I'm planting over the top of it with the pumpkins and the squash, they're so fast growing that I don't think it'll be an issue. And then in the spring, you know, in the wintertime, we knock down the fall weeds with the occultation in the fall. And then with the compost mulch over the top, we actually don't get really weeds to start taking off in here until what? It was like almost the daffodils are just about done.
Right. So you didn't even scrape off the daffodil foliage.
No, you can see that's it right there.
There's 2 beds.
There's 2 beds, one on the outside, one on the inside. And you may notice I'm walking on it too, because I'm not too worried about that either, because basically I'm so light. No, because the natural loft of the soil with the biology that's kind of going on in here, it's not really getting compacted. And the more we do this, the more we find that you know, the worms and all that kind of stuff are just really working it. So I think people kind of get a little too, I don't know what the right word is, kind of zealous about never walk on a bed, but it's kind of like, yeah. Yeah, I don't think you want to use your bed as a footpath. But you know, to cross over or occasionally stand on it, it's probably not that big of a deal. You know what? We may use more bales of hay than I think. Maybe not. So this is probably going to be the most time-consuming part of the whole thing, I think. Okay, so we got all of the straw laid out, or I should say the hay. And the next step is we're going to use our Rainbird sprinkler here, and we're just going to wet it down in a couple of zones for a couple hours, and then it should be good to plant after that. It just seemed like after we had all that hot weather, the ground underneath really was pretty dry. So we want to kind of do 2 things. We want to squish the hay down, you know, with the water, kind of flatten it out a little bit, and secondly, get some moisture into the ground so that when we put the transplants in, that they'll have a better shot of not just being put into something that's really dry. Okay, well, we had to wait till the next day to actually get in here and plant. And what we ended up doing is we ended up really wetting this whole thing down, because the ground had dried up so much because of the hot weather we've had in the last week or so. So after we got it all rehydrated, the mulch is down, we rehydrated it, and we decided we would just plant today, which now today is a beautiful sunny day. As we near the end of it, we kind of took a break from this afternoon, and we're just going to finish up the last couple of ones. Now what you may notice in here is these guys are all looking pretty small, but it's the fascinating thing about this is in about a month and a half, it's all going to be just totally covered with vines, and it'll look really pretty cool. So we got in the back, we have squashes and pumpkins that are edibles for winter storage. And then the front half, where you can kind of see where the sprinkler is, this way is all decorative pumpkins. So we've got like casperitas, we've got a larger one, it's a white one called Moonshine. We've got a whole bunch of ones that are little itty bitty jack-o'-lanterns, and then we also got the Munchkin variety too. So, and then there's another one called Ferndale. I'm not sure, I think that was just a larger jack-o'-lantern type almost. A little bit bigger. But anyway, so I got
Jarrendale.
Jarrendale,
It's with a J.
J, right. Oh, you're right, it is. Jarrendale. See,
I don't know if that's how you say it, but it's spelled with a J.
So the actual planting itself is actually pretty easy. What I do is I just use my dibble stick, and I just kind of like push the mulch back, and then I've got 4 plants left to put in. These are all casperitas, and what I'm doing is I'm putting 2 in a hole. So I just use the dibble stick to make a hole, stick the guy in, and then a little bit over further I'll put another one. Pretty good. Okay, and then I got one more spot over here. Now this was all daffodil beds. So this we're just using the dibble stick to push through the mulch to the soil, and
we're not even really close to the daffodils, are we?
not really. The actual daffodils are probably about an inch or two below where I finally, get the dibble stick in. So I'm not even bothering them at all. And that's it. I'm just going to take this extra potting soil and just throw it in here. And that's all there is to it. Last thing we'll do is I'll just take the hose in here and wet it down. But so this whole project, I mean, when it took more time wetting it down, just letting the sprinkler do its work. But if I think about, from the point where we pulled the plastic back, we put the mulch down, what do you think? We put maybe 2 hours of work into this?
Yeah.
And an hour of it
was a lot of just
planting.
water.
Yeah, a lot of it was just water.
Water and breaking up the straw.
Mm-hmm.
Hay.
Yep. And that should suppress the weeds until the vines really get rolling. And then in the fall, when we harvest, we're just going to chop and drop and leave the vines where they are, occultate the whole thing again, and that would be probably from around early November to right around the 1st of December.
Just depends on our frost.
Yeah, and then we'll pull the plastic up again in December, put our compost on the daffodil beds, and just keep going. This has really been worked out really well.
So this is the 3rd season of pumpkins?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and planting them again in the same spot hasn't caused any problems. We're going to fertilize these guys with Jadam liquid fertilizer, the grass-based one, and also apply some JMS in here during the course of the summer when we're putting our fertilizer down. Probably only going to fertilize until these guys are really, really spreading out, and then at that point just kind of back off on the fertilizer and kind of wait and see if it needs a boost or anything like that, maybe in August or something. But I'm thinking probably by the end of July these guys are going to be spreading around pretty good, and at that point they really don't need any extra encouragement. They go pretty.
And irrigation is just with the shooter.
Right, yeah. I'm going to get another one of those guys because I have another water line that runs off the back of my cooler, the cooler over there. So it'll shoot this way, and then that one, if it's backed up to right here, will do double duty. Is it'll water the roses behind me and plus this in here. Now, the one thing that folks might have wanted to know about, and I thought we'd just throw this in this video, is what happened to the sweet peas, that we were doing the sweet pea fence, and we did it in 2 places. This is the sweet pea fence along against the garden, and then we'll show you some pictures of the sweet pea fence epic fail that was up against railroad ties, and clearly that made a big difference. These guys were both watered the same, but these guys here made it through the heat and are setting seed, which we'll use for next year. And the sweet peas against the fence over there, they never really thrived, and no matter how much water we were putting on them, they just kind of burned up. So what I learned from that was if you can smell creosote from a railroad tie, it's probably not a good place to plant something. Even though it was a great concept against the fence over there, it was too much. It didn't work out. Also, too, we'll throw a couple pictures in the end too. This is kind of a catch-all thing, but we'll throw a couple pictures of what happened in the tunnel with the cord and things. Those guys got really fried. We had 2 days of 115 degrees, and then
That's outside.
And it's outside, and the 3rd day it was 106, and we had on 2 of those days we had probably 20-mile-an-hour winds.
Right.
You know, so it was like a convection oven in the side of the tunnel, and they just got fried.
I mean, we didn't even have blossom drop. They
No.
just like
They dried. It was like
they
a
just
dried
dried in
flower.
place.
Yeah, it's not like they wilted or anything like that. It's like they literally were a dried flower. It's
And
just
so
bizarre.
our sweet pea season came to a very abrupt ending.
Yeah. So, important safety tip. Sweet peas, for the most part, do not like it when it's 115 degrees.
Nope. I didn't either, so.
So anyway, folks, just wanted to kind of show you the easy way we're doing the pumpkins and how we're doing the weed control on it, and it should we'll put some posts out, you know, during the course of the growing. Last year we kind of tracked it every week just to kind of see how things are changing.
They changed fast. Once they started to really roll, boy, they
Yeah.
changed fast.
It'll take a few days to get adapted to, you know, the transplant. But I mean, these guys have been in here all afternoon. They never wilted, so I think they're gonna adapt to it real fast. So thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.